Now, and I've said this before with the Nintendo Switch 2, but it's really about to be a unicorn and the last of its kind. And this is something that's kind of insane to think about if it plays out the way that some people are reacting on the internet about some of the news that we're getting. So, we've discussed how we know that Microsoft is expected to bring games to the Nintendo Switch 2, but it now seems like Sony is looking to bring some of their games to other platforms in an accelerated type of way, and even bringing games to the Nintendo Switch 2 as well as Xbox and other places. Now, we do know this is happening a little bit. We've got Helldivers 2 that's on the Xbox platform. We do know that Microsoft is going to be bringing over games to Sony PlayStation and to the Nintendo Switch 2, but something popped up recently when it comes to a Sony job listing that has thrown the internet into a tizzy and really brings this thing when it comes to the Switch 2. It makes it almost the most unique and the last of its kind. And we're going to talk about that, but we're going to discuss exactly what Sony's probably going to do when it comes to their games. So let's go ahead and jump into this here, because there is a brand new job listing at Sony Interactive Entertainment, and they are seeking to hire a senior director for multi-platform and account management. The job description states that will be responsible for, quote, shaping and executing the global commercial strategy for PlayStation Studios software titles across all digital platforms beyond PlayStation hardware, including Steam, Epic Games Store, Xbox, Nintendo, and mobile. So here's the thing, guys. We already know that Sony has some type of multi-platform strategy even before this job listing. Patapon, that's on the Nintendo Switch 1, backwards compatible Switch 2. Freedom Wars as well, that's also on the Nintendo Switch. So they've already been doing some stuff as well. Plus there's the Everybody's Hot Shots Golfer, Everybody's Golf Hot Shots, there we go, that's the game. In addition to the Lego Horizon game. So they have their first party IPs on the Nintendo platform. Now, every single time that one of these other games came over, people kind of dismissed it as, oh, well, it's more of a dead IP, or, oh, it's Lego, or MLB The Show. Okay, well, that's MLB, they're forcing them. There was always some type of different thing to kind of say, okay, you know, it's no big deal, right? Like, it's just something else and it's to the side. But now with this job listing, it's got people thinking, well, maybe they're going to bring over Astrobot to the Nintendo Switch 2, or maybe even The Last of Us is coming to Xbox and coming to the Nintendo Switch 2, or something like that. And I don't know if that's going to be the strategy for Sony. I don't know if they're going to bring over their massive big games like Horizon, like The Last of Us, like God of War to other platforms. I do feel that it's going to be more of the outside games and getting a content strategy to get those games on other platforms, because there's no sense in those games just languishing in nothing when you can put them on other platforms. At least this is what I think Sony thinks, because they're already putting some of their other games on other platforms that are kind of the dead IPs, or just nobody cares about them that much. So I think Sony is thinking that there's no point in wasting those IPs. So how about something like Gravity Rush? Pretty much everything that the Sony Japan studio did, that's just done at this point because they closed them down. I think all of that stuff can have a second wind, can have life on the Nintendo Switch 2. Gravity Rush in particular is a game that I think that whatever this guy is going to be hired for, or girl is going to be hired for, I think that they might try something with Gravity Rush, especially with the movie coming up, and having a multi-platform strategy for that game, considering nobody was really buying it like that on the PlayStation 4 and on the Vita and the systems that it came out on beforehand. So I think something like Gravity Rush would be big. I think something like the rest of the Japan studio games, maybe Folklore, bringing that back. There could be other things that they can do that this strategy would really work well. Now, once again, I still don't think it's going to be the biggest games. Like some people are saying maybe Astrobot and all that. I mean, it's possible, guys, but I'm just not sure. But here's what we do know. If this does happen, and even to this point right now, the Nintendo Switch 2, the Nintendo Switch 1, but going forward with the Nintendo Switch 2, this is crazy because they're going to have games, not only their own exclusives, but they're going to have games from Microsoft that are first-party Microsoft games. They're going to have first-party Sony games, all on one platform, which I don't think has ever been done before for a console technically the Nintendo Switch 1 has already had that, but now going forward with the Nintendo Switch 2, we're going to see pretty much a bunch of games, it seems like, coming over from Sony and from Microsoft, plus Nintendo's exclusives with the Nintendo Switch 2. So that brings about a pretty interesting dynamic when it comes to what the console industry used to be and how the console wars were a thing and how now it's kind of fading and it's more about the, I would say, revenue or profit wars. I think it's more going into that. Now, I've already talked about this before when it comes to Nintendo, that I think at some point, like, would you see, like, I don't know, some of their older games on other platforms? I've said maybe PC. I thought that Nintendo could do that in the future. I just don't know when, but right now their strategy of exclusives is working overall, so I don't see them doing that right now at this point, but it's something that maybe in the future they could do. But with Sony, I think that they're looking at it from, hey, look, we're not super expanding our console business, like we're selling, but it's not like we're hitting the levels like the PlayStation 2. It's not like there's some type of massive base that we can expand and get bigger on every single time. And it's only going to get more expensive from here, guys. Some people are thinking, oh, well, everything's going to be just fine because PlayStation 5 is selling well enough. And it's like, well, what if the next system is $700 or $800? You're going to have other systems to kind of fall back on because it's already really expensive for a PlayStation 5 Pro. It's about $700, and if you want to play your physical games, it's $800 because you need an $80 disc drive. So I do feel that Sony's probably thinking the next generation, we're going to have to make sure that we have backup plans and other things because we don't know how well stuff will sell based on it. And I think they're probably looking at their PS5 Pro sales and saying, wait a minute, not as many people are buying this, they're reacting this type of way to this price. What about next generation? So I think that's part of it. Very interesting situation that's happening here, and we'll kind of see how it plays out as this whole generation kind of goes along. I also think that Sony probably feels that, hey, look, this whole console war thing or whatever is kind of done when it comes to Xbox. They've already pretty much conceded. They're not really selling too many more consoles. So at this point, what does it matter? Maybe we should just focus on making the most money because we've also had some layoffs here and there, and maybe we can make more profit and all that. So maybe they're thinking that as well. So what do you guys think about all of this? And how do you think Nintendo's position is at this point with the Switch 2? I think that it pretty much sets up the Switch 2 to do insanely well, especially if it starts getting some different type of Sony games here and there, and then coming in with Microsoft games as well, as we already know that there's going to be some titles that should be announced at the upcoming Nintendo Direct. So I think it actually sets up the Nintendo Switch 2 to do really well. And then of course you have Nintendo's main games that actually drive the console sales, and that would be the big first party stuff like Pokemon Legends and of course Donkey Kong and Mario, Zelda. All that stuff's going to be great. So what do you guys think overall with this? Let me know in the comment section below. But before we get into the next topic, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop. But let's go in and jump right into the next topic here, and let's discuss what's happening with Persona 3 Reload and how there was a prominent leaker that is teasing it in an upcoming Nintendo Direct. So it does seem like Sega Atlas is preparing to bring over Persona 3 Reload for the Nintendo Switch 2. The news comes from Reset Era member, I don't know how to say his name, it's like LOL. He has a really good track record when it comes down to Sega and Atlas leaks, and essentially he talked about this and he kind of teased it in a very sly type of way, and someone said, hey, give us one of them when it comes to Sega or Atlas, what they're going to be doing. And he said this: I'll tell you, there are many obvious ports coming. For instance, keep reloading the newsfeed. So that right there is an instant hint that they're going to be bringing over Persona 3 Reload, which we kind of already knew that that was going to be happening because there was other people that said, yes, Persona 3 Reload was happening, and it just made sense when Atlas didn't bring over Persona 3 Reload to the Nintendo Switch 1. That right there told you that it was probably going to be on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it looks like that is going to be the case now with Persona 3 Reload. So I do think stuff like Metaphor ReFantazio, that's going to be coming over as well. I think eventually Persona 4 Revival, that's going to come over to Nintendo Switch 2 as well, but that game's still a couple of years off and all that. There might be some other Sega games like Sakura Wars or other titles that could come over that have years past, so I do think that Sega does have some big plans for the Nintendo Switch 2, just like they had multiple games right there at launch. So I do think that Sega's going to have big plans for the Nintendo Switch 2, and there's going to be a lot of games. They already had a number of games right there at launch for the Switch 2, so I think that they're going to continue that, because you're looking at the different sales numbers that you see for the Switch 2 and how it's just dominating Japan, and it's been one of the best sellers worldwide overall. And I think that's going to continue when it comes down to it, because when it comes to console sales, I mean, really, you only have two options down at this point. I mean, Microsoft is still around, but their systems just don't sell anymore. PlayStation's a number of years old, and you have the only real console hybrid out there with the Switch 2. So I think it's kind of like one of those things to where people are just going to buy it, one, because there's going to be great games coming, but two, because there's just not a ton of options overall when it comes down to it. And portable PCs, people just aren't buying those like that. So I do think Sega's going to be there when it comes down to it, and we will see when it comes to this potential Nintendo Direct that could be happening anytime now at this point. So what do you guys think about Persona 3 Reload and other big Sega ports titles coming over? Let me know in the comment section below. But now we're going to move on to another potential game, and it looks like Spongebob SquarePants Titans of the Tide is coming to Nintendo Switch 2 this year. It's a rumor right now, but the famed leaker, Mr. Bill Kun, has stated that THQ Nordic will be bringing over a brand new SpongeBob game, and it looks like it might be announced sometime soon here. The game is titled SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide and will be released on November 18th. It's developed by Purple Lab and will be on the Nintendo Switch 2 and other platforms, and will be priced at $39.99. And the funny thing about this game is that it was kind of already leaked, but it hasn't been officially announced. So now we have just more information on it just in general. So I'm not a big SpongeBob SquarePants game player myself. I do like the show. I think the show is actually really good, but I'm just not a huge game player of the SpongeBob games, just because I don't really feel like playing SpongeBob games. I mean, it's just not something that I kind of grew up with. SpongeBob was already a show. I was already kind of old when SpongeBob came out, so I didn't grow up in the era of wanting to play like the licensed games as a kid, like on PlayStation 2 or GameCube or anything like that. But at the same time, I still think that it's a good game to bring over, especially SpongeBob licensed games. People just like SpongeBob, and they usually do pretty well. They've had other games that have done well, like Battle for Bikini Bottom and stuff like that. So I do think that it'd be pretty cool. Obviously, the game might be good. You know, it might be actually like a good game or something like that. And it's a cheaper price, so, you know, you don't ever know what to expect with stuff like that. But once again, we will kind of see what is happening here, and we'll kind of follow if this does actually end up going down. So what do you guys think about that as well? You can let me know in the comment section. And for the last topic, we're going to discuss what is happening with Star Wars Outlaws. Now, we know that the game is coming to the Nintendo Switch 2, like in a deluxe edition, comes with DLC, comes like with all the updates. There's some nice stuff with this game. Hopefully it runs well, because we haven't seen too much footage of it running clean the whole time. We've just seen small little snippets, but it does seem like this franchise is cooked overall, at least according to Tom Henderson. And he's reporting in a new YouTube video that Ubisoft has recently canceled plans on a Star Wars Outlaws sequel. The decision to cancel Star Wars Outlaws sequel was apparently based on the lackluster sales of the original game on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. However, Ubisoft is hoping that the Nintendo Switch 2 version can actually do some big numbers or do some sales, and I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I think that they essentially greenlit the Star Wars Outlaws Nintendo Switch 2 version before all of the sales numbers were really even, you know, tallied or totaled. And I think that maybe if they could go back and say, I'll just skip this, let's just do something else, they would. But I think it's too far in. They have to essentially finish it. And that's just my own speculation, guys. That's not me saying that's exactly what Ubisoft was thinking. But I mean, if a game is not successful on Xbox and PlayStation, and you're going to have a Switch port, what, a year plus later at this point, right? Going on a year later, I don't think that's going to end up doing anything super crazy, considering the type of game that it is. I mean, it's a third-person shooter, adventure, open world type of game that heavily relies on technology, and it's probably not going to play as good as it does on there. Is this a game that people are going to really want to pick up for portable play? We just don't know at this point. And some people were surprised that Star Wars Outlaws was even made for the Nintendo Switch 2, considering the type of game that it is. But once again, we'll have to wait and see how it does. Hopefully it does well. I don't want Ubisoft games to do terrible overall. Like, there are people, that work there, and of course, games don't do well, they'll probably get laid off and stuff like that. So hopefully the game does well. Hopefully people end up picking it up. I'll definitely check it out if it's a good game. I have not played it on Xbox and PlayStation just because I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but if it's good on Nintendo Switch, or if they want a review code for me, I'll definitely check it out. And I usually get review codes from Ubisoft if I want to play the game. So we'll see how the port turned out when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2. And I hope it's really good, because I think that'd be good if this series got another chance, because I think that there's some potential based off of what I saw when it comes to people playing the game and all of that. So what do you guys think overall when it comes to everything that we talked about here? There was a lot to go over. Let me know in the comment section below. All right, that wraps it up for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.